What's going on, guys? It's Omniarch, and today we're playing Clash Royale again. Now, obviously, I just recorded my first video. You could tell I'm wearing the same thing, got the same chest and rotation. So what I'm going to do this video is we're going to play one battle, actually, and then I'm going to do a 2v2 if we can. I'm not sure if you can do them at level 2, but we're going to do that and then see how it goes. And we're also going to talk a little bit about some of the early tips and tricks that you can use to get better at Clash Royale. Now, of course, the number one thing is elixir advantage. The more elixir that you have over your opponent, the better. So you see how he didn't wait for us to hit 10 elixir. He just kind of dropped all of his stuff at the bridge. And that is a great way to make sure that you don't touch my tower, because since nice fireball, not gonna lie, since he went first, I was able to counter him with all of my stuff. So we're gonna see the witch doesn't actually get any more skeletons deployed, which would have been nice if she did, but he did use pretty much everything that he had in order to counter that push. I'm gonna use archers here because Prince is very powerful. And I'm going to deploy the witch as well, and hope that I can distract him and take it out, which is good. He did a counter push in the other lane, which is a common thing that you can do. Counter pushing opposite lanes kind of throws off your opponent. I think he actually might be a player that is what is it? He's played the game before. This is not his first account, that's for sure. Nice fireball by him, but he doesn't get my spear goblins, which is the main attacking unit that we have here. So now I'm going to actually just push with my giants. Probably shouldn't have pushed that lane, but it's okay. I'm going to actually just arrows everything here. See if he does anything. Nope. He might, yeah, there we go. He deploys the archers, so we're going to have the giant do a ton of work here on the tower. And I think, like I said, I think this is a player that knows the game pretty well, because he is playing it as such. So we have a couple of things here. So we're gonna drop our what's our knight to kind of tank a little bit there. He's going to arrow all of that, which is good for us because it doesn't matter. And we're going to deploy that. We're going to do spear goblins, and we're going to do bomber again. Now, it's good to not group. You see how I'm putting my troops on both the left and the right-hand side of my tower? If I had put them all in the same spots, then it would have made them all get hit by the spell, which is what you don't want. So I'm going to drop my giant there, and my prince, or my archers right behind it. We're going to arrows, just to take out pretty much anything that we can. I'm going to put our spear goblins here. I'm going to drop a fireball. Hopefully I can hit that prince, and I do. And I'm going to deploy my bomber here, and hopefully he doesn't take it out. And I'm going to deploy my giant actually right here, hoping that I can take out his stuff before he can take out mine. And I'm gonna try and cycle the fireball before he can, and I'm gonna try and do it. We did it. Okay, so we won by 81 HP. So I think he was a player who has played the game before. I just was able to kind of outcycle him and kind of outmaneuver him in some plays that made a big deal. I think him starting with the giant on the bridge was a really bad idea. He probably assumed that I was a low-level player who didn't know what I was doing, in which case that would have really freaked me out. But it really just comes down to, you know, how you can counter certain cards. Now, I really hate that it has this 1 here, thinking I can request a card, but I can't because I'm not level 3. But we're going to talk about a little bit about some of these cards before we get into that 2v2. Now, let's just analyze some of the cards that you start with. Now, the knight here, as you saw, 726 health and 74 damage per second. Now, I like to look at damage per second more than just strictly damage, because damage itself doesn't really necessarily mean that it's a good card just because it has high damage. You know, if its hit speed here, which is 1.1 seconds, if its hit speed is like 2 seconds, high damage doesn't matter because he might be dead before he can even get that swing in. And again, I'm doing this as a live stream type of video, so I have to edit it because I'm a lazy piece of garbage. But so you see the knight here, 726 hit points, 74 damage per second. If we look at the giant, 1900 hit points 80 damage per second. So higher damage per second on the giant and higher hit points. Now, of course, he can only attack buildings, so that's the difference between the giant and the knight, but also the giant costs 5, whereas the knight costs 3. So a little bit of a different, you use them in different scenarios. The giant's a very, very, very tanky card, and really is good for those big pushes. He's also good at soaking up damage too, so if they swarm, or if they, you know, let's say they put, I don't know, if they put a prince down and he charges down your lane and you drop a giant, yeah, it's going to do a ton of damage to your giant, but at least you have the opportunity to not take the damage to your tower. So in some instances that might be good. Generally I wouldn't do that just because it's kind of like a waste of a giant. But, you know, it is what it is. If we look at the archers, only 132 hit points, and that's actually per archer. So when you deploy archers, you see 2 come down. They both have 132 hit points. They both, I believe they're both 37 damage per second. So yeah, so that's really over 70 damage per second, which is good for a 3 elixir card and 132 hit points. Now, the archers can also hit air units, which is good, which is something that they have against the knight. Now, you might think, okay, so he has 74 damage per second. The archers effectively have, it looks like 74 as well, if you consider both of them combined. So what's the big deal? Does it really matter? Well, you'll notice the combined HP of both archers are actually lower than the knight combined. So you're saying, okay, so the knight is clearly the better card in every instance, at least for ground fights, which isn't necessarily the case. Now, it's kind of useful with the archers to have 2 of them, because let's say they drop a spear goblins, right? Now the spear goblins will be 3 versus 1 against the knight. So 3 spear goblins versus 1 knight. In order for the knight to kill the spear goblins, he has to hit 1 at a time. And while he's doing that, he's taking a ton of damage. If you drop archers, now the archers can shoot 2 attacks at the same time. So the archer's actually killing the spear goblins faster than the knight would, even though the knight has more health. There's still instances where the archers will be better, especially obviously against air units. Anyway, moving on to the bomber. I'm not a huge fan of the bomber, but if he's used by the right player, he's very good. You can see 73 damage per second, but he does have a area damage, so he does the same amount of damage roughly per second as the archers and the knights, but he does it in an area. So if they throw down a spear goblins and you have a bomber, the bomber might just kill all 3 spear goblins all at once. And actually, you'll see that's actually the case, because spear goblins only have 52 health per spear goblin, and the bomber does 140 damage in his little area. So that's actually enough to take out archers in 1 shot, which is cool. Again, only 161 hit points, which is a little more than an individual archer, but not by much, and there's only 1 of him. So it's really easy to counter the bomber. Especially because if we look here, we can click on my name and you can scroll down and you can see that princess towers do 54 damage per shot with their arrow. So if we look at this this guy, so my tower will kill a level 1 spear goblin in 1 shot, which is good. And for a bomber, it'll kill the bomber in, it seems like, 4 shots. And you'll see the range here is 4.5 tiles, and I'm sure you'll notice the game board is kind of like a, we'll just go into a training match just to explain it really quickly. But you can see it's kind of like a grid, and it's grass, of course, so it doesn't really look like a grid, but it is a grid. And if we pick out a card, you'll see he'll fit on one of those tiles perfectly, and you can't place him in between the tiles. So his hit distance is 4 tiles, or 4.5, I believe it was. So if I place him here, he should still walk a little bit and then be able to attack that attack that knight. The princess tower here on the right actually has a 7.5 tile range, which means just as they cross the bridge is where that'll begin. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.5 kind of lands you about here. That's where the princess will start attacking. So, and if we exit the training, we don't need to do that anymore. If we take a look at the bomber, he has to be within 4.5 tiles, whereas my princess is shooting him from 7.5 tiles away. So my princess is going to shoot him 2, maybe 3 times before he even gets a chance to hit the tower, so he might only hit it once. So that's why stuff like the bomber and the archers and the spear goblins need to have generally a tank in front of them to do heavy damage to either units or to the tower, or of course you can swarm them and just play like, you know, spear goblins, archers, bomber, you know, rotate back to spear goblins, just put them all out there, and the archer can only shoot 1 at a time, and that is another effective way at kind of overwhelming that archer, because she can only shoot 1 unit at a time. Even if there are a bunch of weak units, she can't do anything about it because she only shoots 1 at a time. Let's look at our spells here. The arrows are level 2. They do 126 damage to a 4 radius area, and 51 damage to a crown tower. Now, of course, that applies to the king tower as well, but, you know, of course, the arrows have to do less damage to the towers than they do to the units. Otherwise, spells would be overpowered, and there would be a ton of people running a full deck of all spells and just spamming the spells at the tower, and just hoping that they can destroy it before the enemy can destroy theirs. So, so that's why the arrows do less damage to the tower than they do to units. And that's why, you know, something like the fireball, while it costs 1 more elixir, does almost 3 times the amount of damage to the crown tower than the arrows do. So arrows are really good for like a swarm of weak units. Like if they drop, like, let's say the spear goblins and they drop regular goblins and then they drop skeletons to kind of like swarm your giant. If you do giant, wait for them to drop their units. Arrows, you just killed everything for 3 elixir, and it'll be, you know, 2 plus the 2 elixir for this plus the 1 for the skeletons, so you'll use 3 elixir to destroy 5 elixirs worth of units, and it's a positive trade. And that's really what the game's all about, is kind of getting those positive elixir trades over and over again. And the more that you can effectively counter your opponent, the more elixir you build up over them, and you can kind of overwhelm their lane and they can't do anything about it. So that's the name of the game right there, is being able to, you know, overwhelm them with an elixir advantage. And that's all about how you play your cards versus them. And that's why sometimes it's better to just, at the beginning of a match, just wait to see what they do and then kind of counter it, because then at least, you know, they have to put up that whoever plays first is kind of risking that elixir value. Like if I drop a giant immediately, the opponent can drop a spear goblins and a goblins right at the bridge, and for 4 elixir counter my 5 elixir giant, who might not even do any damage to the tower. So right away they have an advantage with that. So anyway, moving on. So obviously arrows are good for a bunch of small units. Fireball is good for the bigger units. Not huge. I would never fireball a giant, of course, because this is going to do 325 damage to a giant who has 1900 health. And it's almost the same cost, 4 elixir to 5 elixir, and you're not going to do anything to that giant. So never use fireball on a super beefy, bulky unit. But if they have a witch, right, who has 524 HP, and they drop a musketeer right next to it, which has, let's see, 340 HP. And of course, these are level 1, right? So these will go up as you level them up. So that's why you want to kind of level your cards up as fast as possible, because you're going to be versing other players of similar levels. And whoever, you know, if all your cards are higher level than your opponents, then you'll have an advantage. And that's why it's good to kind of stick with one deck for a long time until you get enough extra cards in other areas to kind of invest your gold, because it's better to have an over leveled deck with underused cards than to have an under leveled deck with overused cards, if that makes sense. Sometimes maybe one will be better than the other, but it really depends on the situation. So, you know, it's great if you fireball, right? Because fireball is 325 damage. That almost kills the musketeer and takes the witch down about 2/3. And the way they scale, as you get higher, Fireball actually starts to overpower the witches. Just they level the way that they level. So if you Fireball let's say they drop the witch and the musketeer by the tower, then you get damage to the tower, right? You'll get the 120 damage to their tower, plus you'll be able to almost kill their musketeer, and you'll do a ton of damage to their witch. So they spent 9 elixir, and you spent 4 to almost kill both of them while also doing damage to the tower. So that's the instance that Fireball is really, really good for. Giant is good for kind of placing him in the back of the arena in some instances, or let's say your opponent like heavily rushes the left side and you place a bomber and the bomber takes it all out. You can immediately drop a giant on the right hand side because you know that they don't have any elixir left. They just used it all on the left side. So now they have to completely switch focus to the other side if they want to defend, and they don't have much to do. So that's the difference between placing giant in the back, you know, and kind of having him walk up to the bridge, and while he's walking you're gaining elixir, so you can kind of support him with a witch or archers or whatever, or dropping him right on the bridge knowing that the opponent can't do anything about it. Spear goblins are very similar to archers in their usage. You kind of want to place them back and away from things. They do only 21 damage per second, whereas the archers do 37, but there's 3 of them. So you actually get a 63 damage total per second versus the 70 something for the archers. But they cost less, right? They're only 2 elixir versus 3 for the archers. So it depends on the situation. Usually I prefer archers pretty much in every instance. I don't really like spear goblins too much. They've definitely gotten a buff lately within the past couple months, but I don't know, they're just too easy to kill. Some of the spells later on can kill them very easy, if not put them like minuscule away. So I don't know, I'm not a huge fan, but I just kind of wanted to bring my elixir cost down, which is why I took musketeer out for them. And then the witch, of course, you know, witch is, I think, probably one of the lesser used epic cards, but one of my favorites because she's a very defensive unit, and she like can really force a counter push, because if you place her in the back, then, you know, she spawns all these skeletons as she's approaching the bridge, and by the time she gets there, she might have 6 or 9 skeletons in front of her. And if they're pushing with like a knight and a mini P.E.K.K.A. or something, I don't know why someone would do that, but if they were, then those 6 or 9 skeletons kind of swarm them and kill them, and whatever's left kind of gets to go in front of the witch as she crosses the bridge. So the opposing tower starts to shoot those skeletons before they kill the witch, and that gives her time to start attacking the tower, deploy more skeletons, and kind of aggro the tower and tank for her little minion skeletons who are going to start to really damage the tower. So I like the witch. You just got to play her right. She's nothing like the wizard, who costs the same amount but has a lot more damage for AoE. Their usages are very different, so you can't play them the same. But with that being said, that's kind of just me wanting to break down all of the starting cards, so that way if you guys are new, because, you know, let's say you saw my first video and you decided to play it, I figured I could kind of help you guys figure out what each card's use might be, and that'll give you kind of an idea moving forward, like in your matches, how you should be playing each card and when to play it and when not to. So with that being said, I'm going to take some water real quick. And then, if we see here, open 10 chests. Okay, so there's nothing really we can do. I'm going to see if I can jump into a 2v2. Now, if you have friends, which I don't, of course, because why would I have friends? I'm a YouTuber. You can play with your friends, and you can, you know, 2v2, which is cool. And if you do that, you can even jump into like a Skype chat or FaceTime, or even just call each other, and then you'll be able to talk to one another, and that gives you an advantage over the enemy team because you're communicating. But I'm gonna just jump into a quick match, and it says your chest slots are full, which means if I win, I won't get a chest, which is fine, because I want to get this crown chest as soon as possible, so that way I can start working on the next one. So let's just hit yes, that's fine. Let's jump into a 2v2. Now, I think 2v2s play a little bit different than a 1v1, because now, you know, the pushes are even stronger, the defense is even stronger, everything is amplified. So he's going to start with that. I'm going to deploy my witch over here to kind of counter that. Why would you arrow? Why? See, here's the downside of 2v2s is if you have a really shitty teammate, there's not much you can do about it. Like, why would you... There's no reason to put the Musketeer in the center of the lane, 'cause she has a very long range. She can shoot from far away. See, now it puts us in a spot where we can get fireballed. But anyway, 2v2s are a good way to kind of, even though they play a little bit different, I think it's a good way to learn the game, because you can you have a little bit more room for error. Like, you know, my teammate is obviously not very good, but I kind of know what I'm doing, so it's okay, because if he messes up, at least I know what I'm doing, and I can kind of, you know, make sure that my errors, or make sure I don't mess up so that way he can, type of thing. And if you're the worst player, that's okay. You're allowed to be bad. I'm not going to even fireball that, because there's no point. I'm just going to drop my witch here. He's there. I would guess they're going to fireball all of our stuff once it hits the bridge. And can my fireball reach? It can. So I'm actually going to fireball that that spear goblin hut, and we're going to take the right tower, which is cool. See, I don't know why he would even do that. There's no point to arrow all that there. But we kind of got a nice little swarm here of stuff, and the mini P.E.K.K.A. is going to just completely obliterate my my witch. Now I'm going to drop a giant all the way in the back here. And him dropping that knight was a very bad play, because now the knight is kind of just alone, and the knight's damage per second isn't very good. The enemy team dropping the witch there was a very bad play, though, because you can see how much damage the knight did. And remember, the knight is actually only 3. The knight is only 3. Ooh, that was... Oh my god, I'm so glad that he missed with that fireball. But the knight is only 3 elixir and almost killed that witch immediately. I mean, it put it within range to where... our crown tower killed it without it even doing any damage. So we're kind of in a spot here where we can actually just fireball the tower, because we're gonna push up that way anyway. No point in doing anything else. I'm gonna try and get my knight here in a spot where he can, yeah, help out my witch. Now, we are definitely taking this victory. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. They just made too many misplays, and we didn't. And they barely even touched our towers, so we were able to get that 3-crown victory. Now, the cool thing about 2v2s is, and we're just going to give them a little thumbs up here. The cool thing about 2v2s is that it doesn't actually affect your trophy rankings. We're going to never rate this. It doesn't affect your trophies, so you'll notice we're at 90 trophies. We were at 90 before. We didn't gain or lose any. If you lose, you don't lose any trophies. So you stay right where you are, but you can still earn crowns. So I got that 3-crown victory. Now, my teammate got a 3-crown victory as well, and I think the way he played was very poor, but he still got 3 crowns from it. So you kind of, you know, if you're the worst player, you still can benefit from doing a 2v2. So we got 140 gold, which is good. 2 gems, which is nice. I like that. 4 archer cards, which lets us upgrade them. We unlocked the mini P.E.K.K.A., which is cool. And we got another giant. Sweet. And 14 spear goblins, which I don't know if I need, but that's okay. So let's actually upgrade our giant for 50 gold. We're going to do that. So make him even more beefy. And we're going to upgrade our archers for 20 gold, because they do a lot of damage. And now you'll notice that we have 40 damage per second per archer, so that's 80 total, and only 74 for the knight. So as you level up cards, they start to overpower the other ones. Now, I'm trying to think if I want to use the mini P.E.K.K.A. The mini P.E.K.K.A. is a very good card against like big tanks such as the giants, because you'll see each swing of the mini P.E.K.K.A. sword does 340 damage, and it has 600 hit points, which is pretty good. So it has almost as many hit points as the knight, but each swing of its sword does 300 plus damage, whereas the knight's only does 82. So you can see the knight is definitely more for a tank, whereas the mini P.E.K.K.A. is really for just smashing those big units down. So if they drop like a knight, you can drop a mini P.E.K.K.A. and it just, you know, 2 shots it and it's done. So mini P.E.K.K.A. is good against the giant. I think I might use it. I'm trying to decide what would be good. I think I'm gonna, who should I get rid of, because I don't want my elixir cost to be too high, but I'm not really feeling like I need the bomber. So I could drop the mini P.E.K.K.A. in there, and then other people who are using the giant are kind of going to get smacked around. We'll put it in there, see how it does. I think it might be better this way. It's not very good to cycle. I can't really cycle any of this stuff, but I'm gonna upgrade the spear goblins just because I can. Again, I'm kind of wasting gold because I don't know if I'm gonna use these later, but 25 gold isn't a big deal. You get that from like one match or whatever. So who knows, maybe our level 3 spear goblins will be a little bit more useful than our level 1s, and that's that. So now you can see 22 hours 55 minutes until we get our next crown chest, and we're still working on these chests down here, so that'll be that. And you know, I'll try and open all of these in a video, you know, because you can, once this timer's up, it doesn't open automatically. I can start the next one without opening it. So I'm going to try and stack these up, and, you know, maybe I will open them and just kind of talk to you guys about what I upgraded. I'm not sure. I'm not sure how this series is going to go, but I just wanted to kind of break down these cards, these basic starting cards, telling you what each usage is kind of for, how to use them, and I also wanted to show you a 2v2. Now, what time is it? 25. We're already 25 minutes in. I'm gonna do one more 2v2 with that mini P.E.K.K.A. just to see how it goes. Obviously, I'm not gonna get any crowns towards my crown chest, and I'm also not gonna get a chest from the victory. But you can also see your teammate down here, and we're just gonna do a little thumbs up. We can see what our teammate's hand looks like as well. And I don't like to play first, but it looks like my teammate's going that lane, so I'm going to drop the witch anyway. And they're going to do a pretty oh, wow, that's a lot of stuff. So this actually is pretty good for us because we can kind of counter them in the same wave here. So you can see that giant is just getting melted because he's surrounded by tons of tiny troops. And that puts us in a very good position to kind of just dominate the lane. Now, I'm curious to see how they're going to try and counter this push because this is like a massive push here. The mini P.E.K.K.A. is going to get dropped right here because it's just going to be super good. There's really nothing they can do. I'm just going to fireball all this because why not? Really just help out. Yeah, they really pushed heavy right from the beginning. This is where I was talking before, where kind of going second is almost better because you can kind of see what they're playing and counter it. Some instances where that backfires is like with the Hog Rider, and I know I've talked about the Hog Rider a little bit in this video and the last video, but let's go find him. He's here. He's all the way up in Arena 4 P.E.K.K.A. Playhouse. But the Hog Rider actually sprints at the tower and only deals damage to buildings. So sometimes people will play like right at the beginning of the game, they'll drop the Hog Rider and then follow it up with like an Ice Spirit or something like that, and it just kind of, you don't really have too much time to react, and it'll start swinging at your tower right off the bat. So those are some decks where it's better to play first, maybe, and kind of catch your opponent off guard for like a huge, you know, reap the rewards of them not being ready. But for the most part, I like to kind of go second and just kind of counter whatever they do first. And I think that last match is a very good example of what happens when you go first and you kind of just overwhelm one lane and it doesn't really work out for you. So anyway, that's pretty much it, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this second video of the Let's Play. Again, if you want to see anything specifically, any types of decks, or if you want me to talk about certain cards or how to get better or anything like that, make sure you let me know in the comment section below. Subscribe to my channel for more videos like this one. Turn on those notifications so you know when the next one is. And leave a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video, so that way I know I'm doing a good job. And that's pretty much it, guys. So thank you so much for watching. This has been Omniarch, and I will talk to you guys again soon. Peace.